don't have a flag, and please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United
States of America,
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, great, thank you. So next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for September 14th, 2020 regular meeting and September 21st, 2020 special meeting. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, amendments, changes? No? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, great. Okay, moving on to first Selectwoman's updates. I'll do this quickly because I know we started a little late, but just a couple of things. First of all, I'm sure those who have kids in school know this already, but the Madison Public Schools announced on Friday that it will be moving towards a full 5-day-a-week in-person model of instruction starting on October 8th. And there's more details on the district website. But the district feels confidence in moving forward with this after review with, what's happening in our community from a health standpoint. And so I'm sure many parents are excited to move forward to get back to a more regular schedule for school. And another announcement that came out, I think on Thursday or Friday, is that the governor announced it was going to be moving forward with some of the pieces of phase 3 of our Connecticut state reopening plan, and that would start on October 8th as well. There's more details available on that on the governor's website, but it includes increasing outdoor gathering sizes and also allowing more capacities at businesses, including restaurants, which can go up to 75% of capacity. And so these will be new changes implemented in October. So I'm sure a lot of our local businesses will be excited to see that, especially as the weather changes and more difficult to sit outside and enjoy the fine weather, but an opportunity to go inside and have more people, go out to dinner and things like that in our community. So there's a lot of different elements of this about phase 3. So if you want to refer to the governor's reopening plan, that the details will be there. Another thing that also came out on Friday, so Friday had a lot of stuff. The Department of Public Health issued guidance on the operation of interscholastic youth and other amateur sport activities for the fall and winter. And I know there'd been a lot of discussion about what would be considered allowable and not allowable. And there'd been a lot of discussion at the by DPH as well as with CIAC. And they just came out with more specific guidelines. And I think everything the town is following right now is in line with what the Department of Public Health is recommending, which is no high-risk sports at this time. And they kind of give a detailed overview of that. And that is available also on the Department of Public Health's website. It has a lot of specificity about different activities and things like that. So it gets a little more detailed, which I think a lot of people have been asking for that. In terms of town operations, I just want to remind people again that later this week, the first installment of tax payments to be paid without penalty is by October 1st. Normally, it is at early August, depending on the time of year, but because of the deferment program that the Board of Selectmen voted to implement in the spring, it gave people several more months to pay their taxes. And so we're expecting, that date is now October 1st. So I just want to remind people because it's an off cycle from what people have done previously. I will say I did speak to the tax collector and things are definitely tracking what had been anticipated. So in terms of tax payment, so no surprises or we're not expecting any surprises. Things have been kind of tracking to where we would normally expect to be by October 1st. So that's good news. Town Hall, we talked about in the past about tying the opening of Town Hall to a phase 3. And we had a discussion today, and I think the big concern about town hall reopening for general access to the public right now is we are using a lot of space in town hall to prepare for the November elections. So a number of the conference rooms, including the room that we normally meet in, room A, has been taken over by the registrars and the town clerk. There is very, whether it's dealing with absentee ballot applications, putting things into computers. We have computers spread throughout that room right now. And then also the town clerk's office and the town vault has been kind of all pulled in to accommodate the high level of absentee ballots that are coming into town hall right now. So we determined that from a security standpoint, it would be almost impossible for us to feel comfortable opening the doors to the general public, general access to the public right now. And so we spoke about doing that in mid-November, once the election has passed and that those public spaces are not being used now for election purposes. Because I think right now we all understand that security is critical. And these are all, materials that the town is receiving and equipment that the town is using for absentee ballots. The thought is that we would like to open by mid-November. We're still kind of in the range with a lot of communities of managing things by appointment only. And I will say, I don't think we've had a lot of pushback from the community. I think people have adapted well. They seem to be getting what they need, either by email, telephone, or online, and then also setting appointments if needed. We're also looking at the town gym now that we have a clear direction from DPH about types of programs we could offer in the town gym. The senior center, the discussion has been with Austin Hall that we're targeting January 2021. Some, communities are opening their senior center in limited capacity. I think given the way our space is and the way the senior center is being used, the idea was keeping it, planning for a January 2021 reopening. And then I know some people have asked about in-person meetings for the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Education has started to have those meetings. And when I say in person, it just means the boards are there physically together. But, you would still be providing remote access to the public. I think that, it's certainly something I think we're open to doing, although we've lost our room until the election. So we would have to find an alternative location. So I think just
Library.
We could try the library, but we also have to make sure that we have the ability to live stream and everything and to run, the meeting that way. So we could use the library, we could use the senior center. So I look to you guys to send me your thoughts about when you would want to start us getting together in person, because we can certainly social distance and broadcast our meetings. But right now we still are under kind of the executive orders, which we have to offer that remote access. So further thought, and I think if you want to email me your thoughts, it's certainly something we could try to do perhaps in November, maybe, get through October, or we could look to using some space in October. So I welcome your thoughts if you want to email those.
Could we, before you move on, could we just
Yep.
circle back to the DPH document?
Mhm.
So it feels like a pretty intuitive document, the guidance that they're offering. I think basketball is the only one that I can't quite wrap my head around, why that isn't considered a higher risk activity. But my question and my concern is that we've got the DPH issuing a guidance document, not a mandate. And then we've got the DECD, which is carrying the weight of the law right now, which says something different. In your conversations with the governor in the town calls that you have, is there any indication that they're going to try to reconcile those two documents and clear up the confusion that people have around these activities? Because quite clearly, we've got groups that are picking and choosing the document they like, the one that they feel is more sympathetic to how they feel. And like I said, the DPH document feels more intuitive. in line with a common sense approach, but it's not, it's a guidance, right? Nobody's obligated.
Well, the reality is the entire DECD document was in partnership with DPH. So they've worked and consulted when they put all this out back in, June, I think was the last time the DECD updated or dealt with the reopening.
Yeah, they did.
program.
They updated that document in late September, like maybe within the last 10 days. And those sports, these sports that you've got here, continue to be acceptable sports.
Well, no, but the DPH is making a recommendation of not to play high risk sports. So that's kind of what they came out with. So if is there a concern about the conflict? Absolutely. I mean, I think a number of people have raised that, and people are requesting additional clarity. I think the hope was that this document would provide that clarity, because those discussions happened several weeks ago. So it'll be interesting. We haven't had a municipal call since this document came out. So I will be curious to see, number one, if any towns change their recommendations based on this. And then secondly, if there's going to be a request for further clarity.
Do we?
An EOC tomorrow, I think. So I'm assuming that would be talking about.
Yeah, well, we haven't really gone through this since it came out with our team. So I'm just kind of providing what was provided by the Department of Public Health, publicly. And this also was sent to the school districts. So the school districts are using this. At least it was sent to me actually by the superintendent of schools. So further discussion, obviously, but it's a lot more specific than what had been issued before. And, I think we'll just have to go from there. We have a policy in place that I think this aligns with, but at the same point, I think everybody would like it to be more clear cut, in terms of this is what we should be doing. And I think the DPH is saying that. So anyways, but that's obviously there'll be more conversations this week about this, since this stuff just came out on Friday. And then the last thing in terms of my update is once again, I'm pitching Madison alerts. We're trying to get sign up increased, and we're going to launch a kind of promotional campaign about this in the next week, just to get as many people to continue to sign up for the Madison alerts. So that is my update. And then I think the next item is citizen comments. So let me unshare this. And
so if anyone has a comment or something they want to say, if you can please raise your hand, that'd be great.
I think we actually skipped over liaison comments, by the way.
oh,
We may have to go back to that.
You're right. Yeah, let's do citizens and then we can do liaison. I apologize.
Okay, I don't see anyone raising their hands.
Okay, all right, well, let's move on to liaison reports and selectmen comments.
There's one hand raised.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay, Leslie, you can talk now.
Hi, can everyone hear?
Yes.
Yep.
And can you guys also unmute Keith? Is Keith there? Keith Costa?
I do not see Keith in here.
Huh.
Mm.
Maybe under, I don't know, maybe it's because I shared the link. Anyway, hello, everyone. Thank you for your time. We sent a letter in, we submitted a letter. So I just wanted to very briefly, kind of meet you in person and just read a very quick statement. Keith is calling me now. I think he's having trouble getting on. Hang on one sec. Keith?
Yeah, I can see everyone. For some reason, I raised my hand, but no one is allowing me in.
So he raised his hand, but I guess you guys aren't seeing it.
Yeah, I don't see him under the list of attendees here.
Right. Okay. I had sent in a request to include him, and I think you got it. Anyway, can you guys hear him? Just say something, Keith, and let's see if these guys can hear you.
Testing. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay. So we'll be relatively brief. What I thought I'd do, I just wanted to read something because it's pretty dense information, and I just wanted to do a quick overview. And then Keith is a lawyer who will, sum things up in a probably more succinct way. But I have massive concerns around 5G, and it's after a lot of research. And I work in the area of, human health. So I've been hearing about this for quite a long time. On behalf of a growing group of Madison residents, we're here to request that the Board of Selectmen halt the build out of 5G wireless infrastructure until it can be proven safe to human health, ecosystems, and property values. More specifically, we ask that the Board of Selectmen consider a resolution to cease and desist the rollout of 5G to ensure you are being responsible and practicing precautionary principles. There is an immediate need to act, as residents have reported 5G installation since July, yet Verizon has reported to the office of Peggy just last week that there is, quote unquote, no plan for 5G upgrades in Madison at this time. I personally saw a crew and I spoke to them, and the manager confirmed that it was 5G they were installing over by the golf course. The proposed resolution would allow the Board of Selectmen more time to further investigate risks and options and wait for the safety studies. This request comes from informed residents who have read peer-reviewed research and are basing the request on evidence and facts. Key issues are as follows. There are several lawsuits against the FCC for, quote unquote, failing to effectively review hundreds of relevant scientific submissions on the harmful effects of wireless technology. Number two, thousands of studies, including US government and military studies, provide unequivocal evidence that the radiation emitted by wireless devices is extremely harmful, especially for children. Our health and the health of our ecosystems are at stake, and it's best to prevent wide-scale radiation poisoning of Madison residents and wildlife, given 5G requires densification of radiation with antenna that are 12 to 25 feet outside each residence, each business, each school, each daycare, and each senior center. And then lastly, research indicates that 5G will adversely impact on climate change. The fact that the threat is so close to every resident and that the crews have been installing 5G equipment in Madison makes this an immediate issue for the Madison Board of Selectmen to address. Okay, so thanks for your time. We'd appreciate any advice on the most efficient way to pass a resolution. And in our letter, I provided information. Eastern Connecticut, their Board of Selectmen unanimously voted for a resolution to cease and desist until it's proven safe. And I just want Keith to jump in now.
Great, thank you, Leslie. And thank you, Peggy, Scott, Al, Bruce, and Aaron to allow me to have this tenuous technological link to say hello.
I can't hear him.
A little bit louder, if you can.
All right. Over 20 towns in Connecticut are working on resolutions to cease and desist 5G, including Greenwich and Torrington. Leslie already told you about Eastern Connecticut. Board of Selectmen in Easton voted unanimously to halt installation. That was May 7th this year, 2020. And what really concerns me is what Leslie discovered when she, in person questioned some crew on the side of the road putting in the 5G already. So they seem to be doing this without any knowledge of the town of Madison. And listen, I may be a lawyer, but more importantly, I'm a homeowner. I'm speaking to you from the Captain Eber Judd House, which is right across the street from Cherry Lane, right around the corner from the Madison Country Club. And what really grabbed my attention on this issue is the fact that Realtor Magazine says 94% of all home buyers are less interested and pay less for property near a cell tower. But folks, we're not talking about a cell tower. We're talking about installations on every telephone pole in the town of Madison. And, there's a telephone pole at the bottom of my driveway. And matter of fact, Peggy, that's where I put your sign when my wife, Frances Taylor, was helping you in your campaign, which of course was stolen and we had to replace. But that's another problem. Hopefully my current yard sign won't disappear, but I digress. The point is, I'm only getting involved as a homeowner because, the Captain Eber Judd House has been around for 280 years, and I've only taken care of it for the last 20 years. but you all have a responsibility to take care of everybody in Madison in terms of not letting Verizon roll out 5G and harm us. I mean, I'm no scientist. I don't know the health implications, but on its face, this is just intolerable. They can't pull this stunt without us knowing about it. And quite frankly, thanks to Leslie alerting me, I said, put my name on that letter and let's sound the alarm. So, you know, I hate to say it, you're officially on notice that this is happening. And
Yeah, I appreciate, you know, Leslie, I know has been in contact with my office. Thank you very much for your comments. And, you know, typically we don't have a back and forth during public comment, but, you know, I will say that I think we've talked to Leslie about a process to review and possibly move forward on any kind of ordinance. And so I'm happy to have another offline conversation with your group about that. I just felt it was premature to put this as a discussion item right now. So thank you for
Well,
sharing.
we're asking for a resolution, not an ordinance. And so a resolution,
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
that can
originally-
happen.
Yeah,
That
So
can
what-
happen more quickly.
right.
'Cause
So, right. But that was, like I said, we'll definitely, why don't we have an offline conversation more about moving things
Sure.
forward? And, you know, we can discuss the different process, because I think originally you were talking about an ordinance, but so let's, I appreciate, thank you for sharing that with us. And I know
Thank
you're
you for your
here to
time.
the board.
Yeah.
Just,
you.
I'm sorry, Keith, I missed your last name.
oh, it's Costa, COSTA. I'm at 509 Boston Post Road, the Captain Eber Judd House.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
all.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Any other public comment, Lauren
There is a,
or Danielle?
there's a Francis Taylor.
Okay. Well, I think, I'm wondering if that's his wife. So that's where the confusion lie. It was under his wife's.
Oh, okay.
So, okay. All right. So now we figured out the mystery. All right. Well, I guess from that point, we'll move on to go back to liaison reports and selectmen comments.
I'll go.
Yep.
So I recently attended the Ambulance Association meeting. We talked a little bit about the study. And quite honestly, they were not on the same page, Peggy, as what you had mentioned before, which is that the study was going to be limited to the association only. They were still under the impression that it was all emergency services. So I thought maybe we could take this opportunity to clear that up and all get on the same page about what we are and aren't doing with that study.
Okay, we can talk offline. I mean, I've had all the service chiefs have been on multiple calls about this and were sent a draft of it. And Sam obviously just sent me his comments, I think, on Friday. So why don't we have an offline conversation and talk about that?
Okay.
Any other liaison comments?
I do.
Yep.
So obviously the Board of Ed was pleased to announce the new superintendent of schools, Dr. Craig Cook, coming from Windsor, Connecticut. So that was great. I believe he starts sometime in December. So I know Madison Public Schools is pretty excited about that to move to the next chapter. Then the library, just wanted to make sure that we're reminding everybody in the public that library appointments are now available Monday and Tuesday at 2 p.m., Wednesday and Thursday at 5 p.m., and Friday at 2 p.m. Guests will have 2 hours to use library computers, print and copy, browse the collection, and check out materials. Saturday appointments will be for computer use only and only at 10 a.m. Takeout and delivery pickup service and virtual programming are also continuing at this time. To make an appointment, call the library at 203-245-7365. And then lastly, Madison Youth and Family Services, and I believe Scott Cochran's going to be on our meeting later, but there is a study that's in the process right now to look at the work components related to evaluation of our clinical services in Madison. The town of Madison is contracted with Loretta J. from CCM, and they have begun to provide requested data back to her. The scope of the study will essentially compare what is provided for mental health clinical services through Madison Youth and Family Services in relation to other similar small towns, and evaluate factors like service types, accessibility, costs, and relationship with schools. Madison Youth and Family Services has always developed their clinical services in line with community needs, so it will be interesting to see how they stack up with other similar towns. They are currently also running.
Can I just, what did you say is doing that?
It's a company called Loretta J. Sorry, her name is Loretta J. from CCM.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry.
Operations their programs and services continue to run almost all virtually at this point still, and that may change maybe in phase 3. Also, for has a social services update. The COVID impact program is now up to $44,100 in direct assistance to residents, and they continue to discuss the ongoing needs and trends with the primary funder of this program, which is Neighbor to Neighbor. End of report.
Okay, great. Anybody else, liaison reports or? No?
No.
Okay, great. All right, moving on to presentation, youth representation proposal. So I'd like to invite Jake, who is a student at Daniel Han High, who has a presentation, and he has a couple of colleagues. This was
Jake is actually the youth representative from on Madison Youth and Family Services.
Oh, okay, great. So I think looks like Jake is on there, and then if you could allow him to screen share, I know he put some slides together. So welcome, Jake, and maybe if you can introduce who else you have on.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hi. So yeah, as Scott said, I am the senior Madison Youth and Family Services liaison. Darian McMahon is the junior liaison, and Olivia Henkel is the president of a youth coalition focused on substance abuse prevention that we started called Valor. So that's who I am joined with today. And if you guys are ready, I can start presenting the presentation.
Sounds good.
Just one sec. Okay, so Madison, Connecticut youth representation on town boards and commissions. So why does this matter? What we're presenting to you today is basically a proposal on getting more youth representation on the town boards. The reason why this is so vital is because the youth voice should be heard on issues that pertain to young people and directly impact our daily lives. And there's a lot of these issues that you aren't necessarily aware of that do impact us. During my time on the board of Madison Youth and Family Services, they've told me, and many people have told me, that I brought a lot of different perspectives to the table that they didn't previously consider. I've been on Board of Ed calls as well, and I've had conversations with the chair, Katie Stein, and she's also told me that her representatives have given her unbelievable knowledge on issues that she didn't even know existed. We offer fresh perspectives and a generational awareness. No matter who it is, really, there is going to be a generational gap, of course, between, you know, a kid and a 40-year-old person. So it's just nice to have a different diversity of age and ideas that comes with it.
I like that you said 40, Jake, by the way. That was kind. Nice.
I was thinking of you.
Thanks.
We provide a lot of new ideas because we're filled with energy and enthusiasm, and we deserve more opportunities for empowerment, mentorship, and a real-world experience. My role on the board of Madison Youth and Family Services has been such an incredible experience for me. And because of the opportunities, the excitement, and the passion that I've gotten from getting to be in this position, I want to make it my job to make sure that 10 times as many kids are able to be on these boards, because it is truly an unbelievable thing that we are allowing.
Getting a call from a board, Jake?
What?
getting a call from another board.
No. But it's truly an unbelievable opportunity that we give to kids to be part of these boards in town. And I think that every single student deserves a chance to be on multiple boards, not just one of two. So what do we want to accomplish? We want to have 16 new unaffiliated non-voting liaison positions on select boards and commissions. And we want to have a stronger youth voice with meaningful engagement in town discussions. We want representation of all town members and validation of the importance of the youth perspective. So basically, as youth, we don't feel that we get enough of a voice on a lot of certain issues in town because we aren't necessarily considered. There's a lot of different things that impact us that an adult wouldn't think impacts us. We want to just have an ability to have a say. We're not asking for a vote. We're not asking to be affiliated with a party. We're not asking to fill a certain position. We just want to be able to sit at the table and give our voice when we feel we have something to offer. It's a validation thing. It's not even just, being part of something bigger than us or, sitting at the table with all the adults. It's just being able to be heard. That's the best gift you can be someone said, is that you can just give someone the ability to be heard. So how are we suggesting we accomplish this? What we're seeking today is support from you guys, the Board of Selectmen, and official approval of this idea. We want to have recruitment of liaisons and rollout of the process by the end of 2020, because if I'm correct, that's when the new voting of members on boards begins. I'm not sure if I'm 100% okay. But we want to have new positions on there for the new voting cycle. And we want to have youth liaison collaboration meetings. So what this means is that we are basically seeking to have all of the liaisons from the different boards come together as a youth liaison meeting. So we're seeking to add 16 new positions in conjunction with the current 4. So that's going to be 20 youth liaison positions meeting together and having discussions once a month, we're thinking. And we want to just be able to collaborate and see, okay, so I'm on the Board of Finance and the Board of Finance says that they're doing this. This is how I can help you. And the Board of Madison Family Services says, okay, well, we're doing this and we could use help from the Board of Ed, and the Board of Ed is able to help. It's just a huge collaboration process where we can get everyone involved at once and we can make a huge joint effort to make all the board positions as meaningful and connected as possible. So I had a discussion with Mr. Goldberg, and he kind of went over the process of how these youth liaison positions currently came to be. And what he told me is that basically my position is imaginary, and it's actually not like a technical thing. It's more just a tradition of having youth liaisons join the boards. So what we're seeking to do is actually just change the tradition. Having just students join you and just be present and active in your conversations is all we want. Eventually, we want to change the charter, but that's way down the road when you guys are next thinking about reviewing the charter. We just want to have an established place in the charter that says that youth liaisons are needed and they are going to stay, basically. So these are the boards that we're seeking to get youth liaisons as part of. Selectmen, Finance, Charter Review, Economic Development, Police Commissioner, Beach and Rec, Conservation, Planning and Zoning, and Madison and Family and the Board of Ed already have liaisons, and their success and the inspiration they have given us is why we made this today and are here presenting to you. We didn't pick every single board because we thought these are the ones that pertain the most to youth and that would be the most beneficial to hear from youth and for youth to benefit from. So it was kind of like a everyone benefiting situation. So obviously there's not going to be students on the Shellfish Commission because it's just not something that really pertains to students that much. These are things we thought would have the most importance for you to hear us and for us to hear you.
Jake, can I ask a question, or would you prefer me I wait till the end?
Shoot.
Okay, can you describe a little bit about your role on any one of those commissions or boards that you just named, like Board of Ed? Like, what does that look like currently?
So basically, it's kind of similar to what I'm doing right now for you. I just get, like 10 minutes where I just get to present, this is what's going on with the kids. This is what we need. This is what we think we could benefit from. This is what direction we're moving in. This is a project I'm working on that I think you might be able to help me out with. And then basically, I just get a chance to talk with you guys. It's more of like a learning from you and you learning from me type of thing. It's all it is. It's just opening a new conversation. And that's the cool thing about all these liaison positions. It's unknowingly creating a mentorship program in our town.
And I mean, so I've known Jake now for a couple of years with his relationship with Madison Youth and Family Services, and I think he's spot on with just the, hearing the youth voice, but also I think adding a tremendous amount of value at the table with a different perspective. And it's been insightful to understand what's going on inside the high school or in Madison Public Schools or just youth in general, whether it's stress, whether it's, things that are going on in their lives that are affecting how they're behaving. There's a connection from the youth to the police department, the youth to the youth services, the youth to the schools. It's pretty powerful.
I mean, Mr. Murphy, I have a woman, Miss Snyder, all these people, like all over these boards, I've been able to connect with all these different people, and they've all given me such valuable pieces of information, such incredible role models. It's been so incredibly awesome for me to get the chance to do all this stuff that I do. And I accredit it all to this position that I was given.
Can I also jump in really quick?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to talk about something that Jake, Darian, and I did was the survey rollout, which it happens every 2 years, and that's sort of what jump-started our Valor Youth Coalition. And the survey rollout was all about what's going on in school, like how many assets the children are doing, if someone has ever wanted to or attempted to commit suicide, the drug use in the school. So every 2 years we reevaluate, and something that we noticed, a trend that we noticed was the more assets that a child or somebody in hand has, the less likely they do drugs and the less likely they get involved in bad situations. So, and one of the biggest assets is mentorship. And mentorship, like Jake said, proves validation and allows students to be heard, and that's all that students want. Because in this town, I know it's a common theme that students don't feel like they are heard by the adults. And I think that, like Jake said, this is a mentorship program almost. And that's another thing Darren and I are working on as well, but that's beside the point. And, but yeah, I think mentorship is a huge deal. I think it's very important. And if that were offered to even just 20 positions, I think that would prove to the children and the students that Madison does care and Madison does want to hear your voice.
And I mean, this is the survey data that I just pulled up. And if you look, every single category in support declined from
Jake,
2000.
I don't think we can see it.
Can you see it? All right, hang on.
You're in slide sorter still.
Let's see. Here we go. Every single category in support declined over the past 8 years. That says a lot about our current community. If we aren't supporting our youth, then what are we doing? We're the future. And I mean, it's so crucial that we're making sure that each and every student feels supported in our town. And honestly, if I talk to half of my friends, they would tell me they have no idea what is going on in our town. The only people who are truly connected to our town are those who really actively are they're putting themselves in these discussions. They're going to Board of Ed meetings. They're going to other board meetings because they have to. But I mean, no one else is really being, given all this information about what's going on in our town, how they can make a difference. You have no idea how sad it is, how many kids think they can't make a difference. The amount of people who told me that they can't make a difference in the world because they can't vote is so disheartening and just tragic. I wanted to cry because of how upset that made me, because none of these kids thought they had any impact on the world other than putting in a ballot. This is empowerment in its purest form. It's just telling kids, we value your voice, we value who you are, and we want you to sit at this table with us and treat us the same exact way that you would treat anyone else.
Jake, can I Can I interrupt you for 1 sec? So one idea, we just, I think, brought Scott Cochran in, who has obviously benefited from your services on Madison Youth and Family Services. And maybe we could just ask Scott just to provide some thoughts around the youth voice at the table on that board.
Yeah, I think it would, if we could actually maybe turn off the screen sharing too, just so we can have more of a discussion. That was the end of your presentation, Jake, in terms of slides?
No, not yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. We jumped into the thick of it.
It's what we do. Scott, are you able to talk or no? You may be muted. There he is.
Yes. Yeah, I'm listening to all of this, and I'm just so impressed with these 3 young people. I mean, they're just a gift to the programs, and they're all involved with a number of different programs with Madison Youth and Family Services, and they have also started a number of initiatives on their own, which have certainly things that we are supporting, but there are things that they've developed from their own energy, their own minds, and with support of other community members. So just very impressed right now with what they are proposing. And I do think, just getting into the data a little bit, there are certainly areas where we would benefit to develop some of the assets that they've identified. And it's, they're kind of using their concern and their energy to make something better. These are 3 young people that are not, sitting back and just sort of accepting that this is the way things have to be. They're engaging the adults in the community, and they're engaging in change in a very, very positive way.
So I have a question.
So I do think when they're, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Just a question for Jake and Olivia and Darian, and thank you for this presentation. So what is it about town government right now that makes you feel like you're being shut out of the conversation?
It's not a matter of being shut out. It's a matter of just having a designated time to speak and a designated time to give opinions about things that you're talking about. We're talking about the 5G, whatever, that thing. But like you would have value in hearing from a youth perspective, because whether or not you have actually researched it or know a whole lot about 5G, maybe another student does. Maybe a student has knowledge about all of this. If you're talking about, substance use in the high school and where your resources are going for that, hear it from a student perspective. The data is telling you a certain number and stuff, but we're putting a person behind the data. We're giving you a real life person to talk to you about their experiences. And there's nothing more valid than that.
Sure. And I believe that we receive on a regular basis that information, Scott, with student perspectives as part of the presentation, correct?
Scott Cochran, Scott Murphy.
Yeah, sorry, Scott Cochran.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, when I'm making presentations, it's often with as much of the youth voice that I have or that we share on the particular issue. There are times where I'm talking to the Board of Selectmen about things like our clinical services, that have the youth that are involved in those programs more forward in what I'm saying.
And again, you're only hearing from certain people. Like what Scott hears is mostly coming out of my mouth and Darian's mouth because we're his main communicators with the student body. We can only speak on behalf of ourselves. I'm a football player and I'm a huge part of Madison Youth and Family Service, programs and stuff, but I can't speak from a female's perspective. I can't speak from a band kid's perspective. I can't speak from anyone else's perspective but my own. And we can't only listen to my perspective. This is the whole thing that we're doing in school. This is what you guys are educating us about, is the dangers of a single story. You want to get as many different voices involved as possible, hear as much diversity of thought as possible, so that you can get the whole picture and not just my tunnel vision.
Jake, it is
the other thing too that we're not
here.
Sorry, Bruce.
But I was going to say, you've struck upon the eternal conversation that we have as a board, and that is how do we get more community engagement? We are struggling, and you probably can't see it, but I think there might be 5 members of the public on
It's
this call.
22 total.
Is yeah,
Minus
but
us.
I went down the list and discounted staff and us. And it's
And 3 of them are
incredibly
Jake and his
small-
friends.
Right. An incredibly small participation, not just among young people, but among every resident in the town. So I hear your point loud and clear. And for as long as I've been involved in the town, it's been a topic of conversation. I'm just trying to understand better how your proposal changes that reality. You said that you can only speak for yourself when you're in front of the Madison Youth and Family Services. I would say you probably speak for more than yourself, but I respect that you're owning your own opinions as yours. How would that change if you were liaising with the Board of Finance?
Well, did you miss the part about the collaboration between the board liaisons?
Collaboration between the liaison and the board?
No. So basically what we're proposing is we add all these liaisons to the boards, right? But then we're also proposing that we have one monthly meeting in which every single student liaison meets, just the student liaisons. So the Board of Finance liaisons, the Board of Selectmen liaisons, the Board of Madison Youth and Family liaisons, all these different liaisons getting together and having a conversation about how they can help each other out. So basically what we're thinking is if we can get all this engagement going and all these conversations going about all these different initiatives going on and, you know, how we can help each other out, we're thinking that we're going to get a lot more people to join the conversation, because then I could come to you guys and I could say, you know, I'm going through this right now. I could use help from you guys. So-and-so told me that you guys are focusing on this. We could get a nice connection going right now, you know, like that type of thing.
Well, if I could just weigh in here for a minute. First of all, I am so grateful for your energy, enthusiasm, and willingness to take something like this on, all of you, because it is a lot of time and effort that in a very busy life that you all lead as young people. So I know trying to get involved in government is time consuming. And I think that the benefit, I think that you raised earlier about this mentorship, I think is important, because a lot of people complain today that people aren't learning civics anymore. They're not learning the basics of how government works, and they're not learning about how to participate in democracy. So I see this as, from an educational standpoint, a critical component of this. The more people you get involved and the more interaction town government has, it just encourages lifelong participation in our democracy. And so I think there's an incredible positive to having youth participate more because of that. I think that, you know, from the board standpoint and from any of our boards and commissions, the benefits is we make decisions that have a huge impact on the kids in this community all the time, whether it's ordinances, whether it's budgeting every year, whether it's how we invest in our assets in the community. All of those things have a big impact on the youth. And I think to have that perspective, I do think is important. I'm fortunate I have kids right now, younger kids, so I can kind of bring that to the table myself. But I think, you know, having that voice at times coming from when we're looking at big decisions about where to invest, where to grow, where to scale back, what to sell, what do we want our town to be, that whole process, I think the youth voice is very important. I think, but I have to say, I look at some challenges to the proposal you've currently put on the table. And I will say, first of all, you have to figure out how these people are selected, right? And can you get enough interest from the community so that you truly have a diverse group of people representing the youth? And then secondly, it's a time commitment. A lot of these boards and commissions, their meetings are perhaps when you're going to be involved in sports, perhaps during the school day at times. So there's a commitment issue. And I think, you know, what we don't want is to have something overly burdensome and then have it not be successful. One thought I had, and I think my takeaway is we as a board discuss more about this and maybe work on something that we think is practical to roll out if there's support for that. I do think other towns actually have like a youth advisory board that, you know, could act as an advisory board to the elected boards or to the Board of Selectmen. We could look at other models that communities have. And I don't know if you've done that yet, but there might be a good model out there in other communities. I did stumble across some. I was actually researching Health Commission earlier today. And, you know, I found that some communities have these youth advisory boards, which might be more, you know, practical and efficient in terms of how you manage it structurally. So my thought is we could spend some more time thinking about it and then coming up with something that might, you know, address some of the questions and concerns that our board members have had.
Sure.
So
And the good news is, while we consider that, you folks are welcome to come to all of our meetings, and all of the meetings that you've listed out for the different boards and commissions. With the exception of the police commission, I'm not sure about how that works. That's a slightly different group. But the other meetings are all public. They all afford public comment. And for your part, certainly communicating the agendas within your networks, letting your peers know what is being discussed at the town level in meetings. Those agendas are all public and published in advance. So while we ruminate on this, as Peggy suggested, you folks don't. You can begin participating in town government today. There is nothing that prevents you from attending the meetings and commenting on the meetings. And I'm sure if there was an issue that was of import to you, that Peggy would find her way to get it into the agenda as well for a presentation.
I'd like to jump in here. I guess as the resident senior on the Board of Selectmen. I
Over
think this
40, over 40, Al.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm the only one. I think this is a terrifically fine idea. I think having the idealism and energy of youth would help many of us who tend to grow more cynical as we get older. And I would like to hear the perspective of younger people in town through some slightly more formal process. I'd like to see us try to develop some ground rules as to how this might work. Perhaps each board or commission might be somewhat different, but I would very much like to continue to pursue this and come up with a little more detail as to how it would work. I'm very impressed with the Board of Ed model. I'm very impressed with Jake, Olivia, and Darian. And so I'm enthusiastic about trying to push this forward some more.
And if I could finish the slideshow, we did address some frequently asked questions at the very end. So if you guys are interested, I could go over that quickly too.
Yeah.
I think that, not to discourage you, but I'm looking at the time and we're only not even halfway through our agenda right now. I feel like we've covered a lot tonight, and I appreciate all the hard work, but I do think unless the board feels differently, that it's probably time to move on, because I think we've got, you know, a commitment from us to work with you and to revisit this again about how we can envision making this work for Madison.
I mean, I guess from my perspective, Peggy, and I guess Aaron, I'd love to hear your perspective as well, because we didn't hear from you, but
I'm waiting.
Yeah, I know, exactly, me too. I am completely supportive of this, but one idea I had, and I don't think the selection process would be all that hard to figure out, because we're already doing it with Board of Ed and Madison Youth and Family Services. So I think, you know, there's probably a process that would happen through guidance or the Madison Public Schools Administration that's quite easy to figure out and is already, frankly, in process. We just add a couple more boards and commissions to solicit candidates. However, I think maybe we might consider walking before we run. So we have 2 boards in place. Maybe next year we consider adding 2 more. And then maybe the following year we consider adding 2 more after that. But I think jumping from 2 boards maybe to 8 might be overambitious, in my opinion. I think maybe what we might want to do is start with a couple more, that might be more of interest to students, get those cohorts start working, and then move the model forward. So just my 2 cents. Aaron, over to you.
Administration and Madison Youth and Family Services, we both talked to. Administration said they would help with the application and recruitment
Awesome.
process. And Madison Youth and Family Services also said they would help with it. So we're thinking administration kind of does the reaching out and getting awareness about it. And then Madison Youth and Family Services actually handles the application process, getting all the applications together, getting them to their designated places, and having that kind of system going.
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple to figure out. So cool. Thank you.
I just want to thank you all for coming, and I wholeheartedly agree that the more we can hear from members of our community, the better that we can do our job. So I think a few details have to be hashed out. What it would look like, how it would work within the parameters of how we function as a board, including legal requirements and those types of things. I'd love to maybe explore this idea of having a place on the agenda maybe once a month for youth to come and talk about what's going on, because while I agree with Bruce that we have an open meeting, so we have an opportunity for the public to comment, but it's not the same as having a designated time where you can come and know that you're going to be heard. So maybe we can kind of look at that option as well.
Great idea.
And we appreciate you guys, listening to us, giving feedback, and we're really looking forward to following up. And if I could leave you with one last thing, in preparation for this meeting, we actually reached out to students to see how many students would support this idea, and we got 80 different students to put forth support. So just wanted to leave that with you guys.
Great.
That is great.
Thanks, Jake.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jake. Appreciate
Good
it.
job, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night. Thanks.
Okay, so I think moving on next is an update from the Ad Hoc Island Avenue School Future Use Committee. So I think if we could
Graham?
bring up the committee members. And Graham Curtis is the chair. Great. I don't know, Graham, if you have any materials you wanted to share, or you're just going to give a verbal update.
Actually, I'd send something over to Lauren to incorporate, so you'd have it there. If Danielle, if you can pull it up, if she has the ability to.
Yep, I can screen share your presentation.
Okay, great. I figured one less thing to go wrong.
Speaking of citizen participation, so our new committee this year. Great, thank you.
Great. I think most of the committee is also on the line. So it was very interesting. So Danielle, if you could pull up the first slide.
Yep, 1 sec.
Okay, great. Great, thank you. Can everyone see that? Just to the first, so the members with me, Rich, Jason, myself, Althena, Joe Paradiso, and Barbara Resnick have been working diligently since we started this. Next slide. So this is the charge. I don't need to reread it. It was given to us by the Board of Selectmen. Just want to remind everybody, and I look at this myself every now and then just to remember our task. But we did specifically exclude the use as a public school for the town of Madison in our charge. So that does come up from time to time, but we remember that this is excluded. The second key thing is that our task is to come up with a financial impact to the town, and we're focused on that. So next slide. So tonight I'd like to briefly give you an updated schedule and discuss the legal issues. I know Al's been working on it and Peggy's been working on that. Basically, it's ongoing, and we hope to have some kind of resolution on and around November or early mid-November about the extent of the errors and that'll kind of dictate where we move forward. I'll also present the initial public outreach results that we provided. And I'll provide a matrix of options with some pros and cons of the ones we felt were feasible. Also update on the results of the septic feasibility study that we were tasked with, that we participated in to kind of evaluate the capacity of the land. And then I'd summarize with the next steps and where we're going. So next slide. So this was the schedule. It's basically the same schedule we presented back in July. The feasibility study has been completed, and I'll discuss that later. We had the initial public polling, which was through the town website, and I'll present that information. Through that time, subsequent to that, we've narrowed the choices to be ones we felt were most feasible. The real estate development, we started that work, but that'll come a little later. We've been working on calibrating the options through the use of financial models and risk models, which I'll summarize a little bit. And we're here tonight on schedule for the Board of Selectmen update. The schedule after this is somewhat variable based on the results of the legal course. We've been told that we should be fairly optimistic that we'll get some kind of resolution and direction to move forward. And we'll develop the RFP and some kind of further public outreach with a public meeting or a referendum with the start date sometime in February. That's tentative, obviously, right now. And the last bullet on this is the OLM lease expiration date in June. That's kind of our overall guiding direction. We got to keep keeping that in mind, that we need to have some kind of resolution of this prior to getting to that point. Next slide, please. So the initial public outreach, we put a semi-informal, non-statistically significant poll on the town website. We had over 100 responses, some more or less expected, some a little unexpected. We've grouped these into more or less into these categories, and there's no particular order. This does not imply favorable or unfavorably, just the way it kind of fell out. One of the ones we got was a private school seller lease, which was not unexpected because that's the current use. We did get some votes for public school, which, as I said, is precluded from using, but it was mentioned by several people. The other options were residential development, single family homes, multifamily homes, or the possibility of an affordable home scenario. And we'll discuss some of the pros and cons of that later. Also mentioned was some elder care or daycare facility. I think these would probably fall into the category of commercial use, which is prohibited by the deed. But there was one of the items, well, several of the items mentioned. Open space was mentioned by several people. Passive or active recreation, and the possibility of a dog park was also listed. Municipal uses of the building were mentioned by several people, including a rec center, an art center, or a possible pool. And several other people also mentioned some commercial use, light industrial, even retail or office. Again, those were pretty much precluded by the use of the deed. Next slide. So, and this is a little hard to read, but we basically sorted each of the uses, the ones that we thought were viable in the second column. And then we kind of developed a list of pros and cons, and I won't read all of these, but I'll just summarize some of the more common ones. First of all, the private school. Potentially that could generate the most, and again, a lot of this is all subjective, and all this is based on our theory. The marketplace through the use of an RFP will dictate whether these are true or not. But these are the ones that the committee kind of thought, pros and cons. The sale of the school to a private school potentially would generate most cash because it's most valuable as a building, an existing building. There are obviously decreased risk for the developers for the town, likely less public and neighborhood opposition, and there's no change in use. The cons to this use are potentially lower annual revenue, potentially a nonprofit tax issue would have to be negotiated. I know there's been preliminary discussions about this being even if there were a nonprofit, they would be paying, in lieu of taxes, but that would need to be negotiated. And also there's an uncertain long-term demand for this use, potential uncertain. Second, the public school. Again, that's been precluded from our charge. The third action is the next two options are residential, single family and multifamily. Obviously, single family houses is in keeping with the neighborhood and lower traffic and aligns with the surrounding uses. The negative is that if you're able to develop 5 or 6 houses, there would be lower annual tax revenue relative to a more dense development. The next option is residential development multifamily. This is likely to generate the highest annual tax revenue. The cons are likely the most vocal local opposition, the perception of higher traffic, and a potentially uncertain town-wide support for this use of the property in this location. Affordable housing, which is mentioned by a few people. This would meet demand in town. However, this is unlikely to generate much in the way of taxes. It's also, these require tax credits. It's fairly complicated, and you're likely to get some local opposition to this use locally and also town-wide based on the history of some of these applications in the past. Elder care, as I mentioned, is commercial, so we didn't really study it further. The open space, again, the pros, this is likely to generate minimal opposition, neighborhood opposition. The negatives, there's no cash up front, there's no long-term tax revenue, and there is a maintenance cost to maintaining this. The last use would be a municipal use of the building, either a rec center, art center, a pool. I mean, that'd be rather different. There's probably there's support in the community for these uses. However, the negatives are there's no cash, there's no tax revenue, there's maintenance costs, there'd be capital costs, and let's see, yeah, so there's a lot of uncertainty and potentially conflicts with the use of the future use of Academy School, but they might have some of the similar programs. So that was kind of our initial snapshot of where our perception of where these things are. And obviously, again, I said this is very subjective, but this was kind of our consensus. Next slide. One thing I mentioned that for the highest density use would be affordable housing. Because Madison obviously does not have any public sewers, the capacity of the land to support it with on-site septic systems would dictate the use. Therefore, we commissioned a study by Stevens Associates, who had done the previous work for the town on the school project. They were very familiar with that. So they were tasked with evaluating the feasibility of developing up to 25 two-bedroom units on this property, 25 being what you could do without getting involved in state DEP septic systems, treatment, packaged treatment plants similar to what the Muse has, which becomes very complicated. And we thought 25 was a reasonable density based on other projects in the community. That's obviously subjective. They did a layout. Now, this is by no means the layout or even a possible layout, but they needed to do something to show to work to determine the septic systems. The results of that study determined that it was feasible. They worked with the sanitarian. They did deep test pits. We'll probably do further monitoring of the observation wells, but they basically felt the land was quite suitable for development of up to 25 two-bedroom units. We project the market for these kind of units would probably be in the 750 to 800,000, based on some other similar situations for new construction. Next slide. So next steps, the intent, we're going to finalize the air search on around November 1st. We should have an idea whether the number of airs, either it's a very small number or it's a very large number. If it's a large number, that means we can probably seek relief legally because it would be unrealistic to try to approach 100 plus second or third cousins, which is a potential scenario. But we're being told by the attorneys that we can probably seek legal relief once we resolve this. Next step, we'll develop the draft sale RFPs. This is fairly complicated. We've already started looking at the previous RFP we did in town and some other simple comparable sales. This RFP needs to give the ability to to sell the land outright or also develop it as RFP. That was done in Academy. So it's kind of a hybrid scenario. So that's going to be fairly complicated to put together. We had some preliminary discussions with Colliers, who wrote who assisted the town with the RFP on Academy, and they're willing to help out preliminarily. The next step, as I mentioned, we have to do a financial analysis of options. We've already developed some preliminary models, how we can incorporate that, the carrying cost, the sale cost based on various parameters, so that when we get to the point of actually evaluating that, and we'd like to share that information at some point, the model with the selectmen, just to make sure they understand, our assumptions. But it's a very sophisticated, we have some people on the committee who have some extensive experience. Joe Paradiso, for one, who's put together a very sophisticated financial model that I think the selectmen will be very impressed with, and it will give us a lot of flexibility and evaluate that. There are some parameters. We'd like some input at the appropriate time, but I think it'll give us a lot of insights. We're also preparing a risk reward assessment. It's more of a tool to a learning tool, or to teach, for ourselves, determine what the risks and rewards are for these various scenarios. But I think that'll be very helpful. Rich on the committee was able to put that together from his experience in corporate. It's not something I've used before, but I think we're excited to kind of use that tool. And also at some point, we anticipate going out for more public outreach. I'm going to reach out to the local press after this to kind of update them so we can get the word out a little bit. And also we anticipate probably having another poll when we have more specific information. We're not sure whether we want to do that before or after the RFP. We're thinking probably do the RFP outreach prior to the whatever town meeting or town meeting / referendum process we envision having, with the guidance of the Board of Selectmen. The next slide. Questions, comments?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. It's extremely, professional, thorough presentation. And thank you for all the hard work that your entire committee has put into this. Obviously, you guys have been working hard and making a lot of progress, despite, everything having been delayed initially because of kind of the COVID emergency. But you've certainly taken the reins and done a great job moving it to this point along. I guess with that, maybe I'll open it up to board members if you'd like to ask any questions.
Sure, Graham.
Yep.
So with all of the craziness going on this year, did you take a step back and see if maybe our charge was a little out of date? I think we put you guys together before COVID, and did that impact your thinking and your approach?
I'll be honest, some people, the school, some people on the committee did want to possibly rethink the some of the charge, the specificity of the charge, and also the academy school. Some people also question, the rec center possibly going here versus there, but and that may come to pass. But we kind of just, we wanted to get it out there, in advance as much as we could.
All right. So do you feel you have the latitude to explore all of the opportunities in light of what you've just said with the charge? Do you need us to change anything?
No, I think so. I mean, the hardest part was the public outreach, because ideally we'd have a couple of public meetings, at the school with the public, in person. I mean, that's the one thing that's been hard. And hopefully by polling and reaching the press, we'll be able to do that. At some point, maybe we could have a Zoom meeting to the public, because obviously I want to make sure no one can second guess us for not reaching out to the public as much as humanly possible.
I mean, I do think that, when did you have your original public hearing? Didn't you had like some sort of public hearing, didn't you? Back over the summer, was it?
I mean, we just did the poll. We were going to have a public
Okay.
hearing, but then I got, with the Zoom thing and
Right.
we
Okay.
decided
I mean, I know you talked about, I think it's important to have that prior to moving into any kind of RFP phase of this. Now that you have a lot of good information to share with the public about your process. I mean, my thinking is that to have that some sort of public hearing, and it could be virtual, or, just to engage people now, that we kind of have more information, that you have some, more facts than perhaps when we started this process, to educate the public and just get feedback from them. That's my thought.
Yeah, maybe we'll have a Zoom, try to set up a Zoom public hearing. I know we haven't done it, we would be better in public, obviously, but it doesn't sound like it's heading that way, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds like a great option to at least get public input. Sounds like we're at the point now where we need to start thinking about that. So I support that.
Yeah, I don't know if we've had any kind of meetings, any public outreach unlike that, similar to that.
We're having a public meeting right now.
Yeah,
Look at all the public that shows up, Graham. For that.
Well, I think that if you sign up for Madison alerts, the intention is to start really broadcasting these things. I know you also did your poll, and did not get a huge, you said over 100 respondents. I guess.
100. Yeah.
And I think that's something we've been working in town hall about, trying to broaden our reach. And part of this communication system is to trying to do that. So to get things more broadcast, including our meetings, which we still have not broadcast when our meetings are. You kind of have to be on a specific email address and track, the agenda setter on the town website. So the point of this new communication system, is to start really pushing out. There's a Board of Selectmen meeting. Here's the topics that you care, if you care about these things, show up. And I think trying to do that for these types of public hearings is important too. And eventually we will be going in person. It just probably won't be quickly enough for your process. So, and I think the financial options, piece, we as a board are going to have to start talking about the renewal of the lease, because, we have to make a decision. There is the ability for them to renew for another year. And so we need to start thinking through the sense of that relative to where we are in this process, and the financial dynamics around that.
What's the date that it's up, Peggy? Do you know off the top of your head?
Well, it's July 1 or is it August 1st, is the 1-year anniversary.
Summer. Okay.
And so we need to, though, start working on, are we going to renew it for another year? I think last year things went really late, and the idea is that so that school has some certainty about enrollment and things like that as they try to gear up for enrollment for another year. But the process, I think, as amended by the Board of Finance, was that we have to go to town meeting for that renewal for the second year. Even though we approved it, we have to have a affirmative vote by the Board of Selectmen, and then so we have to kind of talk more about that, not now, but I think it would be helpful as you kind of move through your financial analysis. What's your timing on that for your committee right now, Graham?
I mean, we have it's pretty far along. It's probably 90%, and I wonder, if the selectmen, obviously some people have financial backgrounds where they want to get a copy of it, take a look at it, and just, agree or disagree with some of the assumptions we made. Obviously, any model is based on certain assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
I nominate Bruce.
Right.
Yeah. So
I was a
yeah, right. You were. Yeah, you have
yeah,
going on.
I built a lot of models in my life, but it was on Excel 1.0, by the way, so we won't go
You got to go back to Lotus 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
There you go. We had that at Accenture.
I had that too. We ran both because we didn't trust Excel at the time. So
there you
we
go.
just had to have the Lotus backup. But and you'd
we
hit.
got tabs, we got micros.
Yes.
You got it all, huh?
Yeah.
So, maybe, update me. And I think that would be a good idea, just to have us look at some of the assumptions, and we can kind of understand that a little bit more. But targeting, maybe you talked about, maybe in a month's time, having that discussion if you think you're ready, and then maybe we might have some more information on the air search too.
Yeah, I think so. We'll be ready for at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all based on assumptions and market values, but you can
Right.
plug it, you can see, plug in what the sale price is, and, I think it's incumbent on us, the more interest we can get on the property, the better off
Right.
we can
Right.
negotiate.
Okay. And I think, I would recommend you holding some sort of public hearing, maybe in the next month, just getting something, to see, if, now that you have a public presentation to talk about the process and that you've gone through and the poll results, it might be helpful just to have that feedback as we kind of move into the next phase.
Okay, so I think I have to think about how to actually publish it and, on Zoom and with the town. Maybe I'll talk to Lauren, maybe ask her, pick her brain a little bit about the best way to do it.
Yeah, and I think we did one for the Government Studies Committee. So she has done a remote public hearing before.
Okay, and we just got to notice it and things like that. I just got to make
Right.
sure.
Yeah. So actually, you're right. From a time frame and all that stuff, we'll see what would work, but maybe start thinking about that to roll that out soon.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. And like I said, I'm going to send this to the local press, and they can maybe get a little article, get some info. So, depending on
I
people,
think the
assume
local
most people
press
read
is
this book.
actually on.
Yeah, I think they're
Jesse's on right now.
Jesse, I'm going to call you back, Jess. I
So-
promise.
Any other questions for Graham or the committee members at this point?
I'm serving as the informal liaison to this committee, and it's been a delight to watch them working very well together and bringing clarity to where none existed before. So I salute the committee members, especially the chair.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Al.
great job. And the chair doing double duty, by the way, with the building committee for the library and this. So yeoman's work, my friend.
That's his reward for doing a good job on the library building.
Right. And I'm also
I was
learning that I
told-
think Al probably has like 15 liaison assignments, but that's, here nor there.
I was told this was going to be a 6-week gig by some selectmen.
Oh, you fell for that.
Smoke and mirrors.
No names mentioned, but
No.
Okay, well, I guess with that, then we'll just look for another, 4 to 6 weeks kind of update on how you guys are doing. Okay.
we'll do.
Sounds like Joe or Rich probably need to present on the next one. It's, you get a little time off here, Graham.
Exactly. Well, I had the building committee before this, so I was
There you go.
5 to 7. I was on that committee. So
Oh, wow.
All
Good
right,
night.
great.
Thanks, Graham.
okay, great. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Joe.
Making a big
Thanks, Rich.
agenda.
Appreciate everybody's work.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. And we'll move on to the next item on the agenda is discuss and take action to approve the funding of an UTV and trailer for Madison Hose number 1. The purchase was approved through the CIP. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second. Okay, great. And for discussion, so do we have anybody from
I think
Madison?
Bobby was on. I saw him on earlier. Chief Kittle, he
Um,
was. He may have
And-
dropped. Sam's on, I think. There he is.
oh, okay, great.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi,
Chief
it's Bob.
Kittle.
Talk to us, Chief.
Oh, I am
Tell us
here.
about this ATV.
Okay, so it's actually a UTV.
Whoa. Well, there you go.
It's a utility task vehicle. We have gotten 3 quotes, like we were recommended to go before CIP. And what we are looking at is a cam and defender, which is the vehicle, an aluminum trailer from Trailer Depot, and a skid unit, which is a patient mover and coming out of the water. Approximate total is under the 35,000 that was in CIP, and we're roughly at $32,200. The other bids that we got for the trailers, the skid steers, and the UTVs, I can read them off if you'd like, but they were all higher. All others were higher than the prices we went with.
You're comfortable with this brand?
Yes, the cam and defender is actually what we were hoping for, and it turned out bid. So we're ecstatic about that. Just a quick overview of what the vehicle will be used for. Storms, obviously. We can go back just to August here. There were multiple locations in town with the trees and the power lines down that we could not access. One road in particular, Yankee Peddler, was really tough to get to. And we did have a 911 call with a tree into a house there where we only communicated with the people by telephone. So a lot of those things would go away with us getting in there with this type of vehicle to at least protect the citizens and get them out, and go from there. That's all we care about, life safety, obviously, first. So if that vehicle can get those people, that's all we're looking for with that. The parades, believe it or not, the 4th of July and Memorial Day parade, we've had a couple incidents where people have had heat stroke, especially on the 4th of July. And we actually had a car accident at the tail end of Surf Club Road in West Wharf, which made it impossible to get fire apparatus through during the parade time. And luckily we were with the town recreation department, and we had one of their golf carts at the time, and we were able to get there and take care of what we needed to with what we had. So those are just some things that, you know, this vehicle will be used for. The fireworks as well, the night, if we ever have fireworks again, driving around the beach areas, getting in through crowded areas. We've had a report of a car fire in there years ago at the surf club where that vehicle would have been equipped with extinguishers and a couple members where the trucks might not be able to get to certain areas. It also would gain access to town beaches off of Neck Road, Middle Beach Road, Seaview Ave, Chapman Ave area. The purpose of those are a lot of times on the beach, if somebody breaks their leg, and I'll include Hammond Acid actually at this time too. There's no good access points to get to the patient, where if you had this vehicle, instead of walking the person 100, 200, 300 yards, you could properly load them up onto this vehicle and get them to a public access road, which would be easier to load up in the ambulance. It will be able to drive to close locations from the firehouse without the trailer. There is a pretty good speed on this vehicle where we're able to just drive it out of the firehouse. If it needs to go on a longer trip, say to assist North Madison up at the trails, obviously we'd put it on the trailer and tow it up there if they were needed. And that's pretty much the overview of what that vehicle would be used for. If you guys had any further questions.
So this is probably too deep in the weeds, Bobby, but would you store it on the trailer secured, and so that you could just hook it up at a moment's notice, or would
You're
you?
right, that's too in the weeds.
So what we would do is we leave it inside of the firehouse, the vehicle itself, so it's protected from the weather. The trailer is an aluminum trailer, which we chose on purpose to last outside in the weather. And the connection time to put it on the trailer and load up would be under a couple minutes.
Okay.
So it would be ready to go within moments notice. But if it's local, Island Ave, West Wharf, it would probably just go down there, followed by the pickup truck or something like that. I think the top speed is about 35 miles per hour, which is plenty for that.
Chief, how often were you guys, out of curiosity, borrowing or leveraging the ATV up in North Madison?
So we were using it this past storm. We asked for, I believe it was the day after or 2 days after the main storm. Sorry with the background, I can't help that, the noise. But the point with us getting one is if we get a storm, they're pretty much getting the storm as well, where we wouldn't be able to guarantee to use their vehicle if we're both getting hit by a tropical storm or a hurricane at the same time, was what we were looking at. We were just lucky this last storm where most of the winds and the damages were south at this time.
And again, this is budgeted, right? So it's gone through CIP. It's a budgeted item at this point.
Yes, sir. It was approved by CIP. It was on the list for the sum not to exceed $35,000. And we're approximately at $32,200. And those are low bids on all three components of the vehicle.
I will say that after getting through Isaias, and going down Yankee Peddler and seeing what a disaster zone that was and how there was residents on their ATVs trying to get around wires and everything, I can understand the value of needing this during emergency situations. So any more questions for Chief Kittle? Do we need to approve, Lauren's not on, but do we need to approve the actual dollar amount, or do we just do maybe say up to 35,000?
I think it's already in the budget for up to 35,000.
Okay, so we don't have to. Okay. Okay. So all in favor of approving funding for a UTV and trailer for Madison Hose Company? The purchase is approved through CIP. Say aye.
All right.
Aye. Okay, great. Thank you, Chief Kittle.
You all very much.
Hopefully you won't need it.
Thanks, Chief.
Yes.
So.
Thank you.
Okay. So charter review. I'm going to share my screen again. So this was basically a follow-on to our last meeting, I think it was, where we discussed the results of the government study committee. And I think decided that, it was time to sunset that committee. They had kind of done an incredible amount of work and research, and that we wanted to take that research and potentially pass it on to a charter review committee. And so this is kind of flashback to when we laid this all out back in December 2019, recognizing that milestones were unfortunately passed because of some of the emergencies we've been dealing with. So the next step in this would be to appoint a charter review committee. And so I think I wanted to just talk a little bit about, it turns out that the board actually back in August of 2019 did vote to approve a charge. And it had a date specific in there that obviously we've missed. And I guess the board never actually appointed members to that commission. So we have this charge that I guess really is not reflective now of some of the conversations we've had in the process of moving forward. But that charge is kind of mirrors what was used for the previous charter commission back in 2015 when they did this. And so I think if we want to move forward, I think we need to have some discussion, probably not tonight. I think this is just a kind of high level overview of what we need to do, but do we want to take this generic charge? Do we want to make it more specific? Do we want to roll in some of the specifics that we had in the government studies charge, which, was a little bit more detailed. Did I put that in here? That came through and asked and kind of directed the committee to look at specific things. And so we have this information, but then one of the things that we kind of had a big debate about is that there was no recommendation that came out of that. And obviously the goal here is to come up with a proposal for a revised charter. So I just wanted to open this up for discussion for tonight. And talk about how we would want to proceed. And then the other thing is what would be the timeline. And so Lauren did circulate to you kind of what this could look like if we kind of actually got the charge done. And it really starts when you make the appointments. So if you look at the chart that she prepared, and she's not on this call tonight, so I think we can just spend a few minutes talking about this, but if you look, there's two columns. One is, I call it fast track, and the other is more traditional. Fast track would be that this process would happen with 10 weeks of work. So it's not 10 weeks from start to finish, but it's actual work product outside of the hearings and all this other, but the actual work that the committee would do. And then the previous charter committee had basically taken 35 weeks of work. So it shows if we were to try to really move an aggressive way and try to get this potentially on, a November ballot next year, we would really have to compress everything. And so she kind of walked through what, the key things would be required by state statute in terms of hearings and public notice and board of selectmen and things like that. And so this is kind of illustrative of the paths that we could go. If we went with a more traditional route, then most likely this would be voted on in 2022. And, you know, we can figure out how we would want to do that, whether it's on the May referendum, whether it's standalone, whether if we were to wait, you know, if there's also a referendum that we're voting on for, you know, the schools or something like that, it could be partnered with that. So there's a lot more flexibility in 2022. So I guess this is more of a discussion point about how we might want to proceed. And I think we would need to decide, you know, first of all, how specific we want to be in the charge that we would give this commission. And then, you know, secondly, you know, how, oops, oh, wait, sorry. Just playing around with my, I forgot I'm sharing my screen. So I think that's really, I think for tonight's is just to have a discussion about this and hear the board members' thoughts on this. So if, I open it up for comment.
Boy, 10 weeks just seems fast. That would be my gut reaction.
Yeah, where did that come from? Like, who?
Yeah, is that a best practice? Is that a?
Is that just?
No, that was if we were trying to get this on a November ballot.
But has it ever been done in 10 weeks?
Yeah. I mean, it's doable. I don't know. She just said that that is not how this had been done previously. So, and there's no rush to do this. We're still within, I think it's like a 10-year review or something. I think we all want to make this, do it, get it done right and be thoughtful. But, you know, I was just putting it out there because I know that in previous conversations, you know, and Gus has spoken a number of times about the desire to move this forward quickly. And I think we're all recognize we need to make changes to the charter to fix some things, but, and update it. So that, like I said, this was kind of like aggressive scenario to get it on the November ballot. And then the other is more of a more timely thing. And we would target 2022 and figure out where we would put it in terms of referendums.
My sense is that, you know, we work backwards from a 2022 November date and build the calendar around that. I think trying to rush it through with all the vagaries of getting together, not getting together, people trying to participate electronically, is too much for us to get a true pulse of what the community
totally agree
wants. And then with regards to the scope, it is substantially prescripted by the state on what a charter revision does. So I would look to past charges and the statutes and just go with whatever is there, because they're operating under that state statute, and I can't imagine we could issue a charge that would somehow limit them to something different than what that is. So we probably shouldn't even try.
Maybe I'm remembering this wrong. Bruce, Al, comment on this from past boards, but I could have sworn when we had this conversation back in 2019, there was commentary about trying to make it more specific. So I can't remember who said it, why it was said, but probably there's minutes, but.
Yeah, so specifically the state statute gives the Charter Review Commission the autonomy to examine any and all parts of the charter that it sees fit. So it's not possible for us to say, look at section 1.
Zoom in on this, right.
We can make recommendations. We can point out the areas that we think need attention. But
that's not documented, that's undocumented basically.
They're recommendations, they're not mandates.
Got it.
I'm agreeing with what Bruce has said on both points. I don't see any reason to rush this. I don't think we'll get a good product, and I don't think the public will be comforted by a process which looks like it's being catalyzed too quickly. And secondly, I think the selectmen are in a good position to recommend specific areas that they would like the Charter Review Commission to examine and make recommendations on. We can't force them to do it, but I think based on this prior committee's efforts, we have a lot we would like them to focus on. So I think I'm agreeing with everything you said, Bruce.
Okay, sorry about that. My son wandered in here. So, Erin, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I agree that there's no, I don't think it would be prudent to rush it. As far as the charge, I mean, honestly, I'd have to look, being new to this, I'd have to look to see what it says. But I like the idea of the board giving recommendations, and we do have a lot of valuable information from the Government Studies Committee to be able to do that. So I think we're in a good position.
Okay, I think I agree with everybody else's views. I felt uncomfortable trying to rush this process because I think we learned from the Government Studies Committee, they had a hard time getting to a conclusion or recommendation themselves. So we don't want people to feel like they have a gun to their head when they're going through this process. So maybe what we do then is, and then in terms of the charge, I'll do a little more research just to understand things. I think the fact it does talk about considering recommendations, and we can talk about what recommendations we might want to provide the commission rather than putting it into the actual charge. And then I'll also look if there's kind of what the legal kind of requirements are, and then we could revisit this in a meeting, in October perhaps.
Great idea.
And then talk also about membership. And how we would go about that process, relative to the Government Studies Committee, because I know there are some members on that committee that would like to sit on this committee as well. So we can talk about that in another meeting. Okay, great. Wow, I think that was our shortest conversation yet. So, all right. So the next one is also a little bit in following with some commentary. There was kind of two things in what the Government Studies had talked about, things that they saw in their research they thought were potential good practice that other communities have done. That was one of them was Ethics Commission, and the other one was a Public Health Committee. So I thought right now we could start with just a discussion of the Public Health Committee. And I talked to Trent a little bit about this as well. And I think there's a history in Madison a long time ago that we did have one of these committees, but it's actually not part of our recent charter. It's, this would be kind of, and Al, you can correct me, how many years ago when it got dropped, no one quite knows what happened in terms of what the time frame was.
I had to ask us, it's been so long ago.
Yes.
Probably at least three decades back.
Well,
James Madison at least did not have a mask back then, so.
Yeah. But what I kind of just in my discussions with Trent and a little research, there might be a little bit mixing here, because if you look at the state of Connecticut, and I'll actually put up the next slide, it shows kind of the configuration of health departments throughout the state of Connecticut. And the yellow ones are like we are. They're full-time municipal local health departments. And then the white ones are kind of part-time health departments, and then the blue are part of regional health districts.
Most are health districts. That's interesting.
Yeah, so regional health districts. Health districts, you do need to have a board of health that manages, that is an oversight board or board of directors for the health district.
Yeah.
And so each town that's a member would elect a representative to go to that board. So that's kind of one kind of health board concept. And that's where there might have been a little bit of a, not miscommunication, but just kind of misunderstanding about what these health boards are. So there's that kind of health board. And then I was kind of researching a little bit about municipal health departments. Well, what do they have? And so we have about 65 towns in Connecticut that have local health agencies, and 53 have full time. And basically, it's a mixed bag. Some of them have health committees. Some of them have like what you would call a health board. And I just found two examples, and that's Trumbull and Darien. And then others have like what they call a community health alliance. So like Glastonbury recently did a community health assessment, and then what came out of that was a community health alliance. and Stratford has a community health license. This is not all inclusive. This is just kind of anecdotal of ones that I was able to find a little bit on my own research. And so what these groups do is, provide assistance to the health department, but it's also more of a community component about health and well-being in the community, and also working with like the seniors, and it's a much more broader approach to health, because our health department is ultimately, it's like our town sanitarium, right? Dealing with septics and water, and then now with this pandemic, though, we've realized how critical that health department has been in terms of providing guidance to the community and information to the community on important public health issues. So, the idea would be to have some sort of committee made up of citizens with expertise in this area. And I don't know enough about how different ones are structured. I think this is more of a concept. And if there people feel there's some value to looking into this and providing this to our town, I do think that there has been some feedback from the community about having, medical expertise, providing community assistance in times like we've experienced. And, we are fortunate because we have a huge resource in our town, because we have these, top-notch doctors and nurses and medical professionals and researchers that either work in the drug industry or work for Yale, or they're academics in these fields. And so it's a way to tap a lot of that. And when I talked to Trent about this, he seemed that he thinks that's a real positive to have that other resource of information to provide to the community, and also to provide him assistance at times. But then there's also the, bureaucracy component. What is the purpose of this? Is it public policy making? And there's very clear, directives that come out of the state about what the public health department is meant to do and what their mandate is. So, so this is kind of early stage. We haven't spent a lot of, and I'm once again, this is another thing, you hear people's thoughts about whether we would want to take this forward and try to form this kind of committee.
I'd be interested to hear Al's perspective, specifically from a first selectman seat years gone by. Did you guys think about this, consider it?
Well, this recommendation came out of the Government Studies Committee, as you know, and it came out of the section of the report where the committee talked to former first selectmen in town. And the committee's report said that former first selectmen, and they didn't indicate how many, thought this was a helpful idea. I would ask the five of us who have just been through a public health crisis, would it have been helpful to have a standing body of citizens from our community with expertise to help us guide whatever policies we had to make or whatever implementation strategies we had to develop? There were times when I felt like the five of us were pushing our limits in terms of the knowledge we had about some of these aspects of communicable diseases and what's doable and what's medically necessary. So it occurs to me that there's times we could use expertise like that. And in thinking about one of our other ongoing projects, which is our emergency medical services, I know that we as a Board of Selectmen and a Board of Finance certainly think we understand the business side of making a viable agency, but do we understand all the healthcare implications and needs of our population from a clinical point of view? Would it be helpful to have a body of experts like that hanging around that we could consult with? So to me, the state health department can't always give us the local flavor we need for either local policy making or local implementation. So I think it's an idea that has some merit worth considering. We have so much on our plate right now as a board. I don't know that I would rate this as the highest priority by any means, but I do see merit in the proposal.
Are there,
Go ahead, Aaron.
go ahead, Bruce.
I'm still struggling to understand exactly what these volunteers would be doing. Certainly, and maybe this is a bad analogy, but I wouldn't want to put a legal affairs team together to then either opine or otherwise influence the town attorney. We have a lot of attorneys in town. I'm sure we've got a lot of talented attorneys, but I worry about setting up a conflict between experts. Trent fulfills a very specific expert role in the town, and I'm not sure what we would do if, in his opinion, he was recommending the town one thing and a public health committee was recommending something different.
But in fairness to Trent, knowing his, what he was hired in to do and his level of expertise, I wonder if this could have been, similar to like Beach and Rec, how we have an advisory body to Scott Erskine, the director of Beach and Rec. This becomes an advisory body to the health department in times of crisis like this. Trent's area of expertise comes in looking at, specific, health situations in restaurants or septic systems, but maybe he doesn't have specific expertise in a pandemic. So I guess to me, this is tapping into the wealth of experience we have in the town to provide some medical, some health guidance, maybe it's insurance guidance. I don't know all of the things that they would ultimately cover, but to me, it's an opportunity just to leverage the public's experience and get them more involved in an advisory capacity.
Right, but I mean, Trent is a qualified professional in his role in all things public health as it relates to the municipality. And much of what he's done has been informed, if not mandated, by the state. So I guess in this case, if you wanted to create a board of epidemiologists, right, which is what we would have needed for this pandemic, I can't, having a board of GPs, I mean, they're more informed than we are, but substantially throughout this process, Al, to your point, we really haven't had a voice in what happens. It's been pretty prescribed. We've been informed of what needed to be done because, quite frankly, that's the way it needed to work, right? Trent wasn't just ad-libbing his strategies. He was exercising his authority that he has under state statute. So
yeah, it's funny because I feel like, Bruce, you're trying to, this isn't like an oversight board necessarily. It's just an advisory, just like we have the senior commission. We have the Youth and Family Services Board. We have the Police Commission, which is actually a formally oversight board that is directed by the state. Beach and Rec Commission. So many town departments do have these citizens groups that they interact with and get advice from, and it gives them a sounding board on things at time. I think my thought is I want to understand a little bit more about the ones that are specific to municipal health departments, some of the examples here, to understand what value these boards add and what role they've played during this pandemic, which we haven't looked into that at all. Like
I would say beyond pandemic, what role do they play in general in the town?
Right. And find out a little bit more about it. Because I have to say, when I was looking at kind of the Glastonbury example, I thought it was kind of cool. They did this community health assessment. It went beyond, he doesn't have the bandwidth to do some of this stuff. Like these are things for community outreach perhaps that these types of boards could focus on, in expanding, what we offer to the community. But to Al's point earlier, we have a lot to tackle as a board. And it's probably not the top priority, but my thought is maybe, me and Trent researching a little bit more and figuring out if this is the right fit for us and coming back at some point and talking about it again.
Yeah.
Hey, do you know if any of our neighboring towns have this?
Clinton is part of a health district. Guilford does not have anything that I could find. Branford is part of a health district. If you look at this map, you know, we're kind of a unique, not unique, but we have our neighbors. But a lot of the towns do have either part-time or they're part of health district. And it's funny because it shows them. I thought Killingworth was actually in a health district because I remember they're getting everything from the health district. So I don't know if this map is up to date.
Is it possible for us to join a health district? How does that work?
The selectmen had an extensive discussion on this about 4 years ago.
I would say vigorous.
And we never reached total agreement, but we decided, the majority decided to stay on our own at that time. The state provides financial incentives to join a health district, and there are some arguments to be made that there's a greater array of services and more
And
value for the dollar. There's also an argument to be made that a town might lose some measure of control becoming part of a health district. So we had a vigorous and extensive debate, and at that time, we made the decision to stay on our own. But I think the issues are just as alive today, and we could probably have another extensive debate on it again. I think that's not the agenda we had for tonight. The agenda tonight was to see if it made sense to form some kind of an advisory body. And Peggy, I like your idea of kind of noodling it a little bit more and figuring out if it makes any sense at all for us.
Well, I think the larger issue, Al, is evaluating whether or not we see a need in the community, and then if there is a need, what is the best way to address that need? So, public health committee is one way, right, out of others. So, I think if we're going to look at this issue, we should look at it thoroughly. That I guess
even in that statement, though, Aaron, I agree with you 100%. I think, what if the advisory body was the body that then went and looked at and made recommendations back to the health department, the board of selectmen, on whether or not we should be considering looking at a health district? So, an idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there'll be a lot of, you know, once things calm down from COVID, if that happens, I think there will need to be a lot of, you know, post-mortem on that about, and I think we'll see that across the state, you know, what was done well, what wasn't done so well, how do we improve things? And it may be that, you know, we end up, hold on one second, my guys, I'm on a call. Okay. Sorry, the kittens are in the room right now. So my kids are in here playing with them. So I think that, yeah, let's, you know, I think a little more thought, I'll talk to Trent more about it, and we'll just kind of leave this for a future discussion again, including, Aaron, what you're saying, because I think there is a time that we have to really think through, you know, how we move forward to tackle some of these issues. I'm hoping to goodness we don't have a bunch of pandemics in our future, but and it also has to be a part of our emergency operations plan,
right?
It really wasn't before, so that will help.
Well, emergency operations plan, our strategic plan. I mean, we need to connect the dots, I think, to a lot of these different aspects of our town.
Okay.
Can I just ask, Peggy, you mentioned the ethics committee. Are there any other outcomes from the government studies committee that you want to investigate further?
Those were the two that I recall them talking about, and it was noted in the report.
Mm-hmm.
And my intention would be to bring ethics up at another discussion similar to this, but we have, I think, more information on ethics. There's just more data on that. I know there had been some talk about, you know, the appointment process, and I think that's worth discussing as well. How we do it versus other towns, and what are kind of the pros and cons and other models that we can use. And the committee didn't do necessarily as much research as I had hoped actually out of that, but I think they just had a lot to do. And I think that's a topic I'm certainly willing to explore further, in another, in the future. Okay, is everybody ready? Moving on then? We're almost done here.
Yep.
9 o'clock. All right, moving on. So next is appointments and resignations. And so tonight we are here to appoint a new member of the Board of Education. So I don't know if Danielle is Happy Marino on the call.
I do not see.
She's
them.
not here. Okay. Okay, great. So I know you'd all received her application, and Al and I had the opportunity to meet with her this past week. So I guess, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to nominate Happy.
I'll
Okay,
second it.
great. Any discussion? I know, Happy has served on the Board of Education before. And then I know.
Bring back the experience.
Yes, yeah. So she certainly has the experience, and then she's filling the seat for Kirk Barnaby. So this would expire in November 2021. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor of appointing Happy Marino to the Board of Education for a term to expire on November 1st, 2021, say aye.
Aye.
All right, aye. All right, great. Happy, welcome back to the board. Thank you for your service. So in a tough time to be on the Board of Education for sure. Next is tax abatements. And so can I have a motion to, I always mess this up. So,
I'll move, we accept the
accept.
$2,835.03 in tax abatements.
Okay,
Second.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
All right, thanks. I think it's the fact that we're accepting it why I get messed up on that. I'm like, aren't we awarding these or approving them? But okay. And next item is citizens' comments. Danielle, do you see any other people in
I
the
don't see.
waiting?
So
I don't
just
see any-
Danielle, we have 2 anonymous comments.
Yep, I was just about to bring those up.
I would invite those people to identify themselves, and then we can read those into the record, but I don't think we can read an anonymous public comment into the record.
Okay. I just invited them to speak.
They hung with us.
Well, these go back a ways. So they may not have hung with us.
Hmm.
Okay. Oh yeah, 829 and 842. So, okay. All right. Well, these are, and I think we talked about the meeting.
First one we did.
We're looking into it. So, at the beginning of the meeting. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, guys.